Hey guys, welcome to the Bandemic Podcast. I'm your host, Ray Bada. Tonight's artist is Nick Garcia. He's from the Coastal Bend, but now makes his living as a professional guitar player and artist in the Austin area. He's toured nationally with some bands, and he's almost done with his first album, Don't Start What You Can't Finish. Tonight on the pod, we discuss gear, influences, and just what it takes to be a professional musician in Austin, Texas. We hope you enjoy the show. Hey guys, welcome to the Bandemic Podcast. On today's episode, we have the great Nick Garcia. He is a great, amazing sideman that is all around Texas. He's played with some legends, and we can't wait to dig in today. So, welcome to the show, Mr. Nick Garcia. What's up, man?
Mr. Ibarra, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. What flavor are you eating there?
Tiger's blood and cream.
Nice. That seems like
Yeah.
a good go-to that is, it works for everyone. Tiger's blood works for everyone, especially the people from the South.
I ate it too quickly because I didn't want it to melt. It was just like overpiled,
Yeah.
and I still had to drive with it. But I ate it too quickly, and I felt the brain freeze coming on, and I kept eating. And I don't know if a brain freeze on top of a brain freeze is an actual thing, but it felt that way for a second.
We'll find out. It may make for some good podcasting if somebody's having a double brain freeze on a on a
I hope
podcast.
not.
Well, man, so we've been friends for a long time, probably 14 years, 15 years. I think we met in '02, maybe '01, right around that time.
Yeah, man, that's pushing 20.
Yeah. Oh man, I can't math. I'm a musician.
Yeah.
so, so yeah, you're from Alice. I'm from Kingsville. We just kind of hooked up randomly somehow. I'm not really sure how, but
I want to say it was on being on the same bill, possibly in Kingsville,
okay.
but you had the band. I forget all the players, but I know Austin was the other guitar player in the
Yeah.
band. Radio Star,
Oh, Radio Star. Yes.
and we might have played at like Portugal or something like that.
Yes. Port Call, the old flight line. Yeah, it's been through a few different names, but
Like one of those, or you know what? It might have even been Corpus. There was some, I can't remember the guy who had it, but there was a guy that had like a production company called Tribal Productions
okay, yeah.
or something like that. And I mean, I don't remember that he put on the shows, but I remember he did the sound. And I mean, he seemed like a nice enough dude, but at this point, all I could tell you was he was a darker Hispanic dude that had glasses, and that's a lot of people in South Texas, so that doesn't help.
Well, if you're listening, darker Hispanic dude with glasses, we appreciate you for bringing us together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I never got I don't think we've ever sat down and talked about how you got started with music. So I wanted to kind
Sure.
of start there and see if you came from a musical family, or, are you like me where nobody in the family plays music and, everybody's shocked.
Exactly
Really?
like that. Yeah.
So did,
My 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 parents, if they did sing, it was in church, and it was usually out of tune. But nobody ever really played an instrument or anything. I think when I picked up guitar, my dad tried doing the same with me, but like it was just so like we could do something.
yeah,
But then like he could see I was interested, and he lost interest really fast
got you.
because he just had other things.
Yeah.
So like, but even before guitar, it was probably I'm going to say it was definitely second grade. There was a talent show, and if there's anything to be remembered about the early '90s, it's the fact that MTV was still relatively a new concept.
Yeah.
And like as a kid, my biggest obsession was to go to the video store because that was still a relevant thing.
Yeah.
And they had a video that I probably wore out, but it was the making of Thriller, the actual music video.
Yes, yeah.
And so like as a second grader, I just like latched on to like all the moves and tried to learn the dances.
Nice.
And then there was an instance where I saw one of those many like Michael Jackson making of movies or something.
Yeah.
And I saw his debut of Billie Jean, where he does the moonwalk for the first time.
Yeah.
And when I was in second grade, I learned the entire thing and did that for a talent show.
That's amazing. Can you still do it?
Oh no, dude, no.
Just curious.
But I know there's a friend of mine for sure out there who's told me that she has a video of this, and like there was the glove and like the hat and like a little 7-8-year-old kid grabbing his crotch in front of an elementary school.
How'd that go over? Pretty good. The crowd go wild.
Well, the adults weren't happy.
That means the crowd went wild. That means it worked. It was great.
Yeah, but I mean that's kind of I want to say that was the start of it, and then as I got older, about 8 or 9, I think I saw La Bamba for the first time.
Yeah.
And when I saw that movie, like for a lot of kids, Hispanic kids even, like seeing some Hispanic dude, Valenzuela, playing guitar and just the opening lick that. What was her name? Carol. I can't remember her last name. She was like a legendary bass player that she played guitar.
Yeah. Okay.
On that, but she was known for being a bass player. Carol King.
I was about to say Carol King. Yeah, she has those videos on Facebook and on YouTube, right? Where she talks about.
Yeah, and I like for the longest time, I mean, I didn't know about this till like maybe 4 or 5 years ago that it was Carol King.
That's insane.
Playing any of that stuff, but like when you hear that original recording, and you hear the bum 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 bum, like the moment you hear it, it's like as a kid, I just lost my mind with that, and I think after seeing that movie, I was like, I don't know what that is, but I want to do whatever it is he's doing.
Nice.
Old Lou Diamond Phillips.
Whatever he was doing, right?
Another South Texas native, apparently.
That's yeah, definitely. I feel like with this podcast, that's what we're going for. We're trying to remind people that there is massive talent in South Texas, and we're just trying to kind of get the backstory and be like, hey, yeah, this person's a real person, not just entertainment. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
but I mean, of course, for you and me, this is like 80s into the 90s, and because there was less access to like what we're doing now, like this wasn't really a thing.
Yeah.
If you grew up in Corpus, or even if you didn't grow up in Corpus, if you liked fishing, there was plenty of that.
Yeah.
There was plenty of things to do in the water besides fishing. But then on the opposite end of that, you had football.
Yeah.
You had parties and drinking and everything in between, but there really wasn't a whole lot to do. So I really feel like, because at least for me, coming from at the time, Alice was like a town of like 20,000 people. And there was just one high school, which I suppose there still is.
Yep. Still one.
That there really wasn't a whole lot to do, and I didn't necessarily party, and I was kind of like socially inept. So, I had my friends, but they were few and far between, and I just stayed home and played guitar. And I feel like that's part of it, where not isolation, but because there's so little to do, at least at that point in time, and there was so like little distraction, you could just focus on something.
Yeah.
And I remember from my parents, it was like, well, as long as he's not out in the street, there was always that he's not out in the street, so it's okay.
Yeah.
We know where he is.
Yeah.
Even if I couldn't build social skills, he's not out in the street.
Well, we were talking about that with our first guest, Alex Hernandez. I'm sure you know Alex. He's a bass player. He does sound and light at the House of Rock. I know you.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. And he's from Mathis. And I'm from,
Oh
you know what I
wow.
mean? And what we were talking about was just the dynamic of being from a small town and the kind of like people that it breeds. I feel like the people
Yeah.
from the small town are super driven because, like, well, yeah, we're
Yeah.
not from the city. We're gonna show you what's up, you know. And especially
Right.
from
Right.
Alice, were you part of band?
Yeah. I did percussion from sixth grade till I graduated, um, which was awesome because uh, a lot of the guys that I knew in percussion, you know, were at least three of them I could think of off the top of my head were all staters,
Nice.
and you know, two of them were like huge metalheads and Mike Portnoy fans, and one of the dudes went off to UNT and got his jazz degree and plays at Poncho Sanchez's band and all this stuff. So like I had access to really really killer drummers,
Yeah.
and one of which you played with
Mr.
with
Contreras.
Aaron.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, man.
and I mean that's just Aaron is just another example of like you know small town things and in his case yeah being able to just to do something the way he did at such a young age. Like Aaron was always a killer drummer.
Yeah.
Like he was just always solid and just you know it. I think in a sense I was very spoiled to know so many good drummers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely in South Texas, those are rare. When
Yeah,
you get them, you
yeah.
hang on to them because you're like, man, I need
Well,
everybody
I mean,
needs a drummer.
for the most part, like you know, like those dudes anyway, they were doing other things, but like you know, like in South Texas, generally, if you're a musician or like I'll use my some of my family's mentality, not everybody, but when I started playing guitar, a lot of them figured one or two things. Um, I have an uncle who is an Elvis impersonator when he's not cutting hair.
Okay. Oh yeah.
And so everybody thought that like so you just are you gonna be an Elvis too? It's like at the time I was like I'm not really an Elvis fan, and I would never do the hair or the voice or the clothes or whatever. Uh, but then there's the opposite side of that where it's not American rock and roll, and specifically like a South Texas music or mindset is like, well, if you're gonna be playing guitar, clearly you're gonna play Tejano or you're going to be in a mariachi group.
Yeah.
And it's like, I didn't want any of that either. Like, that ain't me.
I feel you. I feel you. So when was the point? Um, when was the point where you were just like, I'm gonna do music? Like this is serious because I remember, you know, there's always a point for someone, you know, where it's just like, yeah, I think this is it. I think this is it.
La Bamba, man.
That was it, man. That young.
That was it. Yeah.
Wow.
I wanted to do whatever it was. I didn't know that you could make a living out of it.
Yeah.
Or in some cases, I mean, considering how the way 2020's been,
Oh, yeah.
not. But yeah, I like it was never something that crossed my mind. Like the money thing definitely came later.
Yeah.
But yeah, after seeing that movie and then finally getting my hands on a guitar, I was like, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to keep doing whatever it is.
Man, that's amazing. Well, I want to say that I definitely saw that when you told me the story of your custom PRS.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so you want to
Yeah.
share that story with how that came about because it's a great you know, I feel people will be really be driven to encouraged by that story, you know.
You mean specifically how I ended up with it?
Yeah. I remember your parents
Oh,
kind of giving you a choice and that's the one. Yes.
I mean, you can't really tell, but I told you about this a while back. It got new frets.
Yeah.
These pickups aren't original. I had a Mexican Strat from Sound Vibes. Well, both of these came from Sound Vibes, but a Mexican Strat that I eventually got. These are Dragon 2s.
Nice.
And these got put into the Mexican Strat. And then I ended up getting single coils put in that Mexican Strat. And trying to remember I held on to the pickups. I sent them to my best friend up in Lincoln, Nebraska, and his wife surprised him or something because she grabbed one of his like already existing semi-hollow guitars and had those pickups put in.
That's amazing.
And then I told him, if you ever get rid of the guitar, give me the pickups.
Yeah.
So he got rid of the guitar. I ended up with the pickups. And this is honestly the third set of pickups in this guitar because it came with the stock like HFS and the vintage bass. And then I traded that out with a friend of mine who has a PRS for I think they're like 5708s or something like that.
Okay.
Those are now in my 339. But previously they were in here and they sounded awful. It was just like this wasn't the guitar for those pickups.
Crazy.
And then when I got them put into the 339, dude, it was I couldn't believe they were the same pickups. They sound killer in that 339. They do not sound good in this.
Man, I've heard that about those pickups. Matt Rolak, the builder from here in town, he put those 5708s in the guitar, and he was like, "Yeah, I didn't like them in that guitar." And then he put them in his Les Paul, and he was like, "That's much better."
It's like I almost gave up on them because I thought they sounded cool in my friend's PRS, but his was like. I mean, maybe it was a custom 22 or something, but like, it was a short scale.
Yeah.
The woods and everything were generally the same, but like, I think he might have had a stop bridge, and the neck I think was definitely more of a Gibson neck.
Oh, okay.
This thing's a wide thin.
Yeah, I love the wide thin.
And I was kind of disappointed, man. I played them for a while on this guitar, and I was like, they're awful. Like they're just. And like I said, I gave them a try before I moved on to something else, and they worked out fine, that 339 for some reason.
Yeah. Huh.
But some people would argue that a 339 is essentially just a Les Paul. The size and whatever, but I mean, a mini 335 really.
Yeah.
People would just say, it's more or less Les Paul.
Yeah, maybe. Many would argue that, right? Well.
Oh yeah.
Well, so I remember one of the other things about you was that you used to have a twin. So you used to have this amazing PRS that nobody in South Texas had PRS. You know what I mean? They were like the untouchables.
Ray Summy.
Ray Summy. Interesting.
He was the first person to buy a PRS from Sound Vibes.
Man, that's amazing. That's good. That's good knowledge. Might have to hit up Ray.
Yeah, I don't remember who told me that, but somebody mentioned that to me. Like Ray Summy was the first one to have one. I was like, huh, how about that?
That is crazy. Ray's also a local legend. And you used to carry around a twin. And I was just like,
I did.
Dude, that was a big ant. What drew you to the twin?
Well, the guitar and the twin were this cat that played lead guitar for Collective Soul named Ross Childress.
That was yeah.
Of course, because the internet really wasn't what it was at that point in time, I just assumed like the twin that I had, and I should have held on to just because it was loud and clean. It was 100 watts rather than like 85.
Yeah.
That thing was like the 94 reissue or something like that, where it was kind of like the quote unquote evil twin.
Yes.
And it had the 3 channels, and to be brutally honest, the best thing about that amp was just the clean and the reverb and a presence knob. Excuse me. But beyond the scope of that medium gain and their like high gain were just awful. I was just absolutely awful. And I could never quite figure out why it didn't sound the same as that dude from Collective Soul. And then I found out, let's see if I can reach this, that live anyway, his primary gain was from one of these.
Yes. I remember, man, I am so surprised you still have that. I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
No, I've thought about getting rid of it, but I still use it. I went to LA and NAMM specifically for the first time back in January.
Nice.
And I traveled as light as I could, and I took a telly with its own Reunion Blues gig bag.
Yeah.
And I'd specifically bought that for traveling in the first place, so it served me well in the sense of like flying.
Yeah.
But I brought that with me, and I had a suitcase and a backpack that had cables and that processor, because like I couldn't take my pedal board, it just wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And so the little bit of playing that I got to do while I was over there, I don't think I ever really plugged into a real amp. And the one time that I did plug into an amp, I was sitting in at a friend's church.
Nice.
And I was plugged into a keyboard amp. And the keyboard amp was being shared with somebody playing keys. And that is a nightmare for a guitar player.
Yeah. You gotta be real sparse.
Let alone plugging into a keyboard amp as a guitar player. But yeah, that was my travel thing. And one thing I found was whenever I run this thing in front of an amp, you can tell bypassed even that the clean tone is completely altered.
Interesting.
So what I would do, what I ended up doing was I ran, it has an effects loop on here as one of the buttons, and you can assign, it's a real weird thing, but essentially what you can do is it's like 4 or 5 patches, and you can just hit a button and assign, like, there's a tube screamer built in, as well as that tube drive with the preamp thing.
Yeah.
And you can assign as many of these effects or whatever to whatever button that you want, and you just press another button and it lights up, and then you press that button again and it saves it.
That's insane.
In a very sort of primitive way.
That's cool.
But what I ended up doing was I took a little Durham sex drive that I had.
Yeah.
And I plugged that into the external effects thing, and that I basically added that pedal to every single patch that was on there.
Yeah.
And when I added that and actually turned the pedal on, it was night and day from not having it in the chain, because like you could hear the difference when that pedal was on.
Yeah.
Versus just the bypass of everything. Like the tone is clearly different, at least to me, and not for the good.
Yeah. That's interesting.
But yes, the twin, the guitar were both Ross, and like for the longest time, certainly after I graduated high school, like I wanted to be that dude.
Yeah. You got to play with him, didn't you?
I made friends with him.
Yeah. How'd that happen?
When he was still in Collective Soul, I went and saw them like on the last tour that he did with them in like 2001 or something. And that was at the outdoor stage at Stubbs up in Austin.
Nice.
And somehow or another, I managed to catch him on the sidewalk right outside the venue. And I remember like I had a really stupid sort of like childish moment where like I was standing right in front of the dude, and I like saw shoes, and then traced the shoes up to jeans, and then it's like a Superman shirt. And then I saw, his long hair, smiling face looking at me, and he's like, "What's up, man?" And I was like, couldn't breathe for like 5 minutes, just so freaked out. But I had some song that I'd done while I was still in high school on like some cakewalk program or something like that was my recording software.
Yeah.
And I made the best of it, and it sounded like everything I was doing at that time was just me trying to sound like that dude.
Yeah.
So like I got to sit there with him in one of their buses, and it was me sitting next to my dad and a friend of mine named David, who was sitting across from us. And dude he just sat there the whole time and listened to the song.
That's amazing.
And was real cool. Well, I mean, we hung out with him after the show. Most of the whole band was walking up and down the side of the bus. There was a long line of people waiting to get stuff signed. And by the time he got to us, he was just wanting to chat and like people, he didn't even bother going to like the end of the line. He just stayed there and talked while people were coming up and handing him stuff, and he was signing and taking pictures, but he just kept talking.
Dude, that's amazing.
And eventually, he left that band and started, of all things, hosting an open mic in the south of Atlanta in some suburb called Peachtree.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And my girlfriend and I literally went there once. Like it was a 24-hour trip where we flew out in the morning, rented a car, drove around, because at the time I was a huge fan of The Walking Dead.
Okay.
And all that stuff is just shot over there. And so there was a place called Sonoya or something like that, where they shot, I can't remember if it was season 2 or 3, that had the governor and the governor's mansion, and like that whole little community with that dude with the eye patch.
Yeah.
One of many people with an eye patch, I guess, because the kid had one too.
Yeah, after a while.
but right. That little I mean, it's just like it's almost like it would feel the main street down in Sonoya where they built this house that's not there anymore.
Oh.
AMC, I think, built it, and they simply built it for that season.
What?
And then tore it down after they were done shooting, and you can just see like the outline of where it was.
That's crazy.
And it feels like a community that's like, it's so small that it would feel like you're driving through somebody's neighborhood. It's so small. At least that was the main street, and it felt like very like, I don't know, folks probably go there and like antique or something. It just had that vibe to it. But we did all that stuff, and then we went back to the place where Ross was, and by this point I'd already talked to him, and I played by myself, and then I got to play with him later on, and then he grabbed my acoustic and was like, "Is it cool? Like, I think you'll dig it." He had an idea about playing something on it, and I was like, "I don't even know why you're asking, dude. Go ahead." and he played some Collective Soul stuff on it, and I was just like freaking out just watching this dude play. And he's probably the biggest reason why I just like acquiesced into being a Prince fan, because that dude always referenced Prince.
Interesting.
In all his Guitar World magazine stuff. They'd always say, like, who's one of your biggest guitar influences? And he would constantly mention Prince, and everybody was just like, okay. But we got to jam. We played Kiss together, and then we played Purple Rain.
Nice.
And he didn't really want to take any solos. Like, he was just like, I'll play, you take whatever. I was like, you realize it's not that fun for me, right? Like, I want to see you play something. But he had me play a few things. We did a Collective Soul tune, that tune Heavy.
Okay.
And before we started it, like, he legitimately looked at me, and he knew how much of a nerd I was about his guitar parts. And he goes, "How does that part go in the chorus that I play again?" And I was like, "For real, dude?" So I was standing there showing him his parts, which was just freaking me out.
That's insane.
And like afterwards, like my ego really wanted him to say something about my guitar playing. Like, that's like, I was like, something, anything.
Yeah.
And the dude was actually more impressed with me as a singer than a guitar player, which kind of let me down a little bit. But he signed that guitar. He's been very cool ever since. Like, every now and then I might text him, or say something. There was an instance where I was gigging with Charlie, and we were going to go through Atlanta on a Friday.
Okay.
And I let him know ahead of time that we were going to be there, and then that whole thing just fell apart and canceled. So I called him the week before, like the Sunday or something before that Friday, just to tell him what was going on and how I wasn't going.
Yeah.
He was like, well, that sucks because I had it on the calendar and I was planning on being there. Um, a weird side note, and I told this to a friend of mine earlier, but I had a dream while I was still doing that road gig, but I had a dream probably 3 or 4 years ago where I was like, have you ever been to the venue out in Bee Caves? Well, I guess it's not there anymore, but it was called the Backyard or something like that.
I'm not sure. I mean,
It was
BK's.
just like a big outdoor stage
Okay.
on the west side of Austin.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Um, anyhow, I had a dream that I was somewhere like one of these outdoor places, and in said dream, I'm probably standing. If I had to guess, it was like 30 or 40 yards away from who I think was Prince
Whoa.
in my dream at the time, and I can't remember if he had passed away at this point or not. But like I saw him in my dream walking toward me, and I guess fight or flight mode kicked in, and I ran off. But when I came back, he had left, but there was like a single purple pick wrapped in like cellophane, the same way like if you ordered just a set of like regular Tortex or something that came in a little plastic thing, but it was one purple pick that was in the cellophane. And I remember I woke up, thought about that dream. I was like, that was weird. And literally about 12 hours later, if that was a Thursday night, this was probably like Friday evening, I get a text message from Ross, which is not common.
Yeah. Okay.
Like that dude hasn't like, I ain't Ross Childress. Why is he going to text me? So I get a random text message from him, and it's lyrics to the Prince tune Paisley Park, like the chorus, where I forget the lyrics, but it's like the girl on the seesaw, and I can't remember the rest of it, but like he said the first 3 or 4 lines, but the last part of that particular chorus is Paisley Park is in your heart, which is not the part that he said. He just said everything else.
Whoa.
And I answered back with Paisley Park is in your heart, and it like got like an emoji of like a smile or a guitar or one of these things or something.
Yeah.
Which later I told him about that occurrence, and was just like, I don't know about coincidences or whatever, but it was just weird that you decided to at first I had to ask him, I was like, did you text the right person? And he's like, yeah, no, you, right? And I was like, yeah, it's just weird the way that lined up.
That is amazing. Well, I was always curious how you got into Prince. You know what I mean? Because I've always known you to like, I could definitely hear that influence in everything you do. You know what I mean? So it's amazing that it came from Ross.
It's there. It's definitely there. I at the very least, if the talent is absent, I can at least say that I'm taller than him without platform shoes, and I'm all right with that.
Man, so how did you go from? I mean, that's pretty heavy rock. Well, for that time, it was nice, good hard rock. You know, what I mean, how did you get from there to playing country? Because you're very affluent in that whole genre of being able to play. Most people, you can hear their original influences, but when you decided to pursue, the country side of things, it was like a shift. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it was like you went so far deep that it was like, oh yeah, I can access this part, but this part is now gaining so much traction. You know what I mean? So how did that happen?
So part of it was 10, 12 years ago. I was getting, I want to say back in like maybe 2006 or 7, I got into what was probably like the first like funk band I'd ever been in.
Okay.
And I was, it was a couple of dudes in the rhythm section that were friends. And the the drummer was friends with, and you've jammed with him before, Bruce Banks.
Okay. Oh yeah, Bruce.
And so that was my first excursion into like really at that point I was really getting into like James Brown and being introduced to like Parliament and at some point in time I think I'd even gotten into King's X probably way before that, and I got to see like how all those elements really tied in, because like they're huge Parliament fans, but those dudes are also big Beatles fans, and like they just are they're their own thing.
Yeah, definitely.
But I guess from doing the funk thing and still being in a rock band, I was in my best friend's band at that time called the Hanyaks. And I got a call. At the time, I was also going to Texas State, and I was doing a music degree of some kind. And I was friends with a lot of people that were also in the music department. And if I ever really did hang out with anybody, it was usually just a bunch of music nerds.
Yeah, cool.
Because they all knew how to party. And I guess at that time too, I was also playing in a salsa band. I didn't know much about it. I certainly did. I mean, like the clave thing was at best, I like knew. I knew there was a 2/3 and a 3/2, and beyond that, like the way all that stuff fit in, just I found out from all these dudes who, like the guy that ran the band, he graduated with like a master's in like salsa composition or something.
Whoa, nice.
And so he would arrange all the horn parts and everything that they did for the group, and he, along with one of the percussionists, backed a Texas country dude up.
Okay.
And they played, like I think the place is called the Thirsty Nickel or something like that. Some place that was on the corner of sorry, you there?
Yeah.
Okay. Somebody was trying to call me. So Thirsty Nickel was on the corner 6th, and I can't remember the side intersecting street, but somewhere up in downtown Austin. And I got the call like literally at the last minute to come play this Texas country gig. And I wasn't really a fan or anything, but they just needed a guitar player for whatever reason. So I showed up with the Paul Reed Smith and with the Twin and with the setup that you saw. And we covered like some old Neil McCoy stuff. And this is probably more than one gig, but I remember a bass player friend of mine named Daniel Rhodes, who tells a story way better than I possibly could. But the guy already played jazz. He played in a gospel church where you really have to have some serious chops to do that stuff. And like the dude he's got chops for days. So the country thing was not hard. I mean, at least for a bass player, 1 and 5. It wasn't that hard for him. But the dude, he had a grasp over the vernacular of country. I did not. And so like we did this Neil McCoy tune called No Doubt About It that I think was like a big hit for the dude back in like the early 90s.
Okay.
And it kind of sounds like the signature lick and everything probably sounds like sort of like a faux R&B sort of like single note riff. And I'm trying to think of like the guitar. I don't remember who played on it, but there's a certain guitar player that kind of embodied that sound. And the guy's name escapes me right now, but he passed maybe over the past year or so. But it was, that like there was some country tunes like this that weren't just all chicken picking and stuff, that really had like sort of like the guitar riff to like My Girl. Or something.
Okay.
Where it's just dum 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 dum, but like it's very like single note, very just clean. probably had coarse on it for some reason or another, but like just a very clean single note line stuff that's very reminiscent of old R&B. I did not know that because I'd never heard the song before. And I remember specifically pissing off my friend, who eventually became my friend, on bass, because between me playing my part and the drummer that was on the gig, neither of us we weren't qualified for the gig. And so like I was coming from a rock and funk background, and I remember the thing that pissed him off the most that he found comical, and actually it annoyed him so much that he added to it, was I was using a wah, and that just set him off. And so he started like slapping and plucking and like doing all this stuff. Like, he was trying to be a smart ass about it, but like I didn't know. I wasn't paying attention. So the funny thing to me about going into Texas country anything was, like, as you very well know, country in like the mid to late 2000s, even as far back as like 5 or 10 years ago, has become way more rock.
Yeah, definitely.
So like I was already doing that, just in the wrong context. But I got into, I want to say, like, if there was a player that was like a gateway drug, so to speak, for country, probably Brad Paisley.
Oh yeah.
Because the dude, like, even though he could do the country stuff, to me always had like this rock or punk rock sensibility to him, especially his tone, which was a lot dirtier than say Vince Gill, somebody. And there was just like some sort of excitement, especially being a guitar player, where you just want to play. Sometimes you just want to play a billion notes for no reason, and that dude has made a career out of that.
Definitely.
And that was certainly my first thing where I saw somebody doing that, and I was like, oh, so like country can be cool too.
Yeah.
And from him, especially listening to that Play album that was all guitar stuff.
Yeah.
There was the song they had Cluster Pluck on there that was just a ton of different guitar players.
Yeah.
And one who was a local legend at the time that you and I both know, which is Red Folkert.
Of course, yeah.
And I saw him play here in town at a bar on somebody's gig. It was like a festival or something at this bar, and I remember I was a little drunk watching him, but I watched him nonetheless, and was just like floored to see that anybody could make a guitar do that.
Yeah.
And so like I drunkenly went up to him and I was like, hey man, do you give lessons? Which I know was a dumb question. He got probably all his life. And he just kind of giggled and was like, yeah. And he handed me like the baddest business card where one side of it was just all red and the lettering and everything was black, but there was an imprint of a black pickguard, like a Tele pickguard on it. And it said his name and his email and phone number and all this. And I was just like looking at it like, for a dude to be called Red and to have a Tele, like, there's no better business card than that. That's one of the baddest business cards I'd ever seen.
Well, it matches his chops. That dude is
absolutely
insane.
Absolutely
insane.
And my first lesson with him, honestly, was probably like 10 years ago.
Okay.
Maybe. If I'm thinking back. It was shortly after seeing him. And at the time, man, he lived like right down the road in Kyle, which from where I was living at the time was like a 10 or 15 minute drive.
Yeah.
And just this little nondescript neighborhood.
Yep. I remember going there.
and sitting in living room and seeing his record collection and seeing his old huge like, I don't know if it was a Super or something like that was in the corner. And of course I brought my Paul Reed Smith because that was probably the only thing I was playing at the time. And I had like just no, in the same way that like somebody like, because this is a very South Texas thing, Tex-Mex, and like my Spanish has never been the greatest. I've managed to surround myself with some friends lately who were like Spanish speakers first and foremost,
Yeah.
and then they learned English. But that's kind of what I felt like when I went in for that first lesson, which was like I had all these like big ideas, and for whatever stupid reason I thought maybe I'll show off, which was stupid, and there was nothing to show.
Yeah.
And yeah, he gave me a few things to look at, and I was like, at the time I had friends that lived in Nashville that were like, why don't you come over here? And I mentioned it to him, and like he shot it down the moment I said anything about it. He was like, yeah, I'd probably wait about 10 years or something before I make that decision. And I was like, okay. And he goes, really? He goes, do you get gigs here? I said, yeah. He goes, you got family and stuff here? I said, yeah. He goes, are you making money? I was like, I mean, you can call it making money. Like, yeah, I guess. And he was like, yeah, I mean, he goes, I wouldn't rush it. And part of it was like, he'd already done it.
Yeah.
And I think he just wasn't down with, that was why he left. He just didn't like the way Nashville, where it was going.
Yeah.
So part of it was just like, besides being, in my case, being a shitty player and not knowing country, it was like, maybe you should rethink that. And if you can build a career here, do that instead. And like, I get it. I mean, I essentially paid for an hour of him telling me stories and finding out just how bad I was at guitar.
I had a similar experience. It was probably much more brutal. Just knowing now what I knew, didn't know then.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're like,
Yeah.
oh, I had no idea. I had no idea what I was getting into.
Well, after that, like I got more into that stuff, and to the point that I was just dissecting everything. Like, and if looking for tabs and stuff is always disheartening, because you find out just how much people don't use their ears.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, I gave up on looking at tabs a long time ago. Even some sheet music, I might set like go measure by measure or something, or phrase by phrase, and then find out like there's a certain slide somewhere, or there's an open string somewhere, or there's just a particular timbre of like what a G note on the high E third fret is going to sound like versus all the way up on the 8th fret B string.
Yeah.
And training myself in my ears to hear that has made me rely more on my ears and less like looking at something. So I got a hold of a bunch of Red stuff, like just his stuff that he'd recorded all the way back in like the late 90s. I think maybe when he had just moved to Nashville or something, and was about, or had just joined
Merle Haggard.
Haggard's band, Strangers.
Yeah.
And I obsessed over some of the songs on there and tried to learn them the best I could. And then about 5 or 6 years after that first lesson, I signed up for another lesson with him, and showed up and like had way more of it down, to the point that we were playing through a hay bale tune that it was also a Haggard cover. It was I Forget You Every Day.
Okay.
And Red does this thing. Let's see here. He does this thing over a 5 over a C, and it's just this right?
Yeah.
And so when I got to that point and did the he's playing the chords as I'm playing his solo the best I can verbatim. And the moment I played that in his big voice, he goes, "Smart ass."
That is amazing.
And he seemed very very flattered that I would take the time to try to learn any of his stuff. But I mean, dude, there's just like so much knowledge in what that dude does, and just how he navigates a fretboard. Like, I mean, dude, even if you're not a country player, I feel like there's so much to be learned from guys like that.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that can, you know, he can definitely do all the fast stuff, but between like making the thing sound like a steel and not having a bender,
Yeah.
um, you know, he said a billion times to different people that he always wanted to be like a Western swing player. He can do all that stuff too.
Yeah.
But his whole mindset about just being a versatile player is like, if he gets called for a blues gig, he's going to play it like a blues player.
Yeah.
If he gets called for a country, like, you know, whatever the gig asked for, he's going to just pursue it as that.
Yeah.
I'm not so disciplined, so I'll try to throw everything at the situation at once. And I found actually like doing some of the gospel stuff that like whenever they go into like the really quick church stuff where it's like don't it sounds like CC Rider or just something with like a train beat even, and you can do some of that chicken picking stuff.
Yeah.
And even though it's not country, it sometimes will go over well, and you see people making just like ugly faces in a good way.
Yes.
That you're throwing some of the chicken picking stuff over some of the gospel stuff, like
The ultimate sign of approval, the stank face.
right, dude. And it's cool to know that like that stuff really can. It can, you can apply all those things like the hybrid picking. You know, you can apply all that stuff to just almost anything, really. I mean, with the exception of trying to do that stuff in a classical setting, that would probably tighten up the sphincter of a lot of classical purists if you're trying to do some steel bends and stuff on a nylon string.
Man, yeah. I really like that about blurring the lines. You know what I mean? Like blurring those lines and not having them so hard. I've always like I have to tell you, I've always admired that I've never heard the same riff twice. It's like every single time I see you play, you just never run out. It's just a constant.
Oh man, no, you need to come to another gig and just see how much repetition there is, man.
I don't know, man. For me, whenever I see you play, I'm just like, how does he freaking not get old? Like it's a constant stream of just like ideas, and I'm just like, I always really admire that about you. You know what I mean? Like I'm just like, man, he doesn't get old ever. And so few guitar players are like that. You know what I mean? So many people are gonna do, you know, they'll do the Stevie thing or the Albert King thing and just harp on it. You know what I mean? Where it's like, yeah.
Right. And some people could do it well. There's a dude in Austin named Eric Tesmer who's like Stevie times 10.
Whoa.
Like he like he's definitely like down to the dress and the hats and everything. Like you're Stevie, dude. Like we get it. But like the first time I ever saw that dude, I felt I had this moment watching the dude where I felt like I was never old enough to see Stevie.
Yeah.
But I felt like that was the next best thing.
Nice.
Just because that dude could do it, but he was a very polished Stevie.
Interesting.
Very, very, very polished. So like, and that's the thing about Austin. Like the Stevie thing is, I suppose it's still huge where you've got somebody with a Strat and a cranked Fender something or another behind them. But a lot of Stevie loving folks. There's nothing bad about it, but yeah, there are definitely, as you say, there are some people that can do it to death.
Yeah, definitely. So do you think that your style and your variances in this growth that you're doing, has that influenced like your gear? Like you know what I mean? Because I used to see you with a PRS, and then I never would have thought of putting humbuckers in the Strat. But then you see a lot of studio guys who are like, yeah, that's a secret weapon. And if you've gone through that, and now you're, you know, with the tellies, you know what I mean? So does kind of what you're doing just kind of like, yeah, that's going to work for that. And then
with the telly, that took me a while to get around to it, because I remember having a friend in high school who, like, you know, had a very strong mindset about the guitar, and I guess he had one.
Okay.
and he was like, "It's the most versatile guitar ever," and I was like, "Whatever, dude, shut up." and you know, probably 7-10 years later, something like that, I ended up getting one and finding out how much I really liked them, and then I got another one that I liked even more than the first one, and that one has actually been my number one. And it's not really the most expensive guitar. It's way cheaper than Paul Reed Smith for sure. But part of the reason of not taking the Paul Reed Smith out to gigs was it's just too pretty.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of road gigs. I've done a lot of road gigs in the past where sometimes I always try to have, even if we're like in a 15 passenger van, I always try to find some way to put my guitars in the vehicle, because the thought of them traveling in the Texas heat,
Yeah.
in the back of a trailer, like that's just no, that ain't, I ain't doing that. And so thinking about the wear and tear that would happen to something like a Paul Reed Smith, like made me not feel so bad about having a telly, because I can think of plenty of gigs where I might have played outdoors somewhere with somebody and I was trying to warm up on like a picnic table, and I had to go do something for a second, so I just took the guitar and set it down on the picnic table. Like I wouldn't do that with Paul Reed Smith. It's just like there's something very sacrilegious about throwing a guitar that looks that pretty on just any surface,
especially with the neck angle, because we all know what can happen.
Oh yeah. And so what I found out is, with the exception of like a metal gig, and I mean even that's can be disputed with guys like John Five.
Yeah.
But a telly, I mean, you can use them for anything, man. I definitely used them for country gigs. I've loved using them for funk gigs. They'll do blues, obviously. I've pretty much taken a telly to almost any situation and been fine. Like, you know, it even with the minimal selections for three pickup selections and a cup, you know, a volume and a tone knob, you can still do a whole lot.
Nice. Well, while we're on the subject, because I know you're a gearhead and I'm a gearhead.
Sure.
We have this segment in this podcast called "What's in the Box," and so I have this box here, and
what's in
the box? And so we put some in here, and what it is
it PG, right?
It's PG, and today we have an overdrive pedal.
Oh, is that the original?
This is version 1, number 869. So version 1, but we just want to hear about overdrive, with what you consider the great overdrives, or maybe your journey in overdrives, because I know you've gone through. I've seen you with Menatone, I've seen you with the OCD, I've seen you with multiple versions of the top boost in the can.
In a way, you're kind of to blame for some of these choices. Just saying.
Oh man. So what do you play? What's your favorite? What is your go-to drive?
Man, that's hard to say. And I only say that because I don't know, man. Like, I have the mainstays on the board, and the OCD, like the version 1 that you have, which you told me about originally in the first place. I remember you're smooth talking, like, bro, you really need to check out a version 1 OCD. Like that. I know they've got different versions, but you know, the blue light, the version 1, that's it. That I've had like a love-hate relationship with that pedal.
Okay, yeah.
Because it's. I remember doing a fly date gig with Charlie where we played Katy, some private party in Katy on like a Thursday. And then we flew out the next day from an airport in Houston, to Springfield, Illinois. And all I had with me was the gig bag with the telly, that overdrive, and the TC Electronic flashback.
Okay, yeah.
And that was my pedal board for that night. And the back line, at least for me, was a twin, like just a reproduction 65 or whatever. And it felt a little weird just having to like just use those things. But like I said, that one's been the love-hate relationship as far as pedals go. But it's on the board now. I mean, despite the fact that I know dude made some choice comments.
Oh yeah.
The fact of the matter is, I still use that pedal immensely.
We taped all of the logos up after that happened.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. On the board right now, I know it's not a gain pedal, but honestly, the oldest pedal I've probably ever had, and I think it's still the original one I've had from being a teenager, was like a TU2, like a Boss tuner.
Yeah.
After that, there's I'm looking at that thing right now. There's a free the tone. Hold up, let me see if I can get this right.
Free the Tone's kind of something new.
It's the version 2 Matt Schofield overdrive.
Oh, Schofield's so amazing. Actually, our podcast is named after his he got a bunch of guys together and they did this thing called Bandemic in the Woods, and it's just amazing. Yeah. And I was like, that's a great name for a podcast. Let's do that. So hopefully he doesn't come after me for copyright.
Man, that could also be not necessarily an incentive, but it could also be flattering if he comes after you because of the name. Let's see. Here we go.
Nice.
So there's that. You know what that is. This, I'm only ever, like right now, it's in the octave up feature.
Okay.
And so it's a very quick, like, what? Bending up, bending down.
Nice.
And people's eyes light up when I use this thing because they're always trying to figure, like, what did you do? What's that noise? I'm like, it's just a harmonist. But I'll use the octave down feature.
Oh, okay.
And I was in a band once that did not have a bass player and did like a rap rock thing.
Uh-huh.
And I had an ABY switch where one side of it was a really crappy PV amp that was all gain.
Oh, man.
And then the other side of it was a bass amp, like a 115. And I had this pedal in front of the bass amp, and I had the wet signal just all the way up.
Ooh. And
through the right PA and subs, it really did sound like there was a bass player because everything I was playing were just like single string, single note riffs.
I know that sub thing is kind of like a David Grissom trick too. He used to have that OC.
And the thing that really helped that too was sometimes I would hit that ABY where I could switch to like just the guitar by itself, or the guitar would drop out and I would just play the bass line.
Nice.
And then like that was a cool trick. It was a little cheesy, but a cool trick nonetheless. But there's the
Free the Tone.
Matt Schofield.
Man, that guy's a monster. What's that sound like?
And somewhere between a roided tube screamer, and if you crank the gain up, it starts getting into like fuzz territory.
Ooh, nice.
Just a little.
Okay.
And then this tone knob is very, very useful as far as just like dialing in different guitars and stuff. It can get really bright and brash over here, but I usually keep it around 11 or something like that. This thing.
Ooh, the animal.
Yeah.
You know what? Austin was
Dirty.
trying to get me to buy that guy. He was like, you would love this. He's like, this is right up
So
your alley.
I had one of these that I bought from some store years ago while I was still doing the Charlie thing, and I could never get along with it because while it did sound good, it was just too noisy, like the 60 cycle hum noise.
Okay.
And so a friend of mine modded it to not be noisy, which completely changed the sound of it, and that ended up just I didn't like it and I put it away. So then I contacted them, the J Rocket, to see if they could just put it back to spec.
Okay.
And this was probably, back in March, maybe.
Okay.
And the person I talked to, I think might have actually been the owner,
Whoa.
told me that they were coming out with a limited run of the originals, which look, this isn't the original one I had. They came out with the version 2 that's more kind of squared box.
Okay.
And this one, it's real tall.
Mm.
You can see it, it's like a brick or platform or something.
Yeah.
But he was going to just return it back to spec, and they did this limited run of like 50 or 100 of the version 1s, and he got back to me and was like, I'm just going to send you one of the limited ones.
What?
So that's what this was. And I'll tell you, dude, this thing, the original one must have had a problem with it, because this thing is way more quieter than the one I had originally.
Interesting.
It's just because the other one was just with that 60 cycle hum.
I love it when people are still trying to, make things better. You know what I mean? They're like, this is good, but I can make it better. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, this, I want to say there was something wrong with that pedal, because the dude even said like it shouldn't do that. I was like, it does. I promise you it does. But yeah, this definitely does that. It's supposed to be a plexi.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And it does that really, really well.
Nice.
It's kind of impressive just how different it is compared to what that is.
Yeah, we know what that is. Man, looks good, dude.
And both of these can get really close to each other, but this one is just more mid-rangey, in my opinion. So it definitely it's more plexi. I would say this one, the way I have it set in that upward position,
yeah, high peak,
is more modern, high gain.
Man, it's really interesting because that was like the exact setting that I used. Tone and volume at 11, and then drive at 1, 2. Like, it was so easy to remember.
When I was doing the Charlie gig, because most of the time I would just leave this pedal on, I was doing this or that.
Whoa.
Just to cut over the band because it was so damn loud on stage.
Yeah.
But I ain't got to tell you anything about that. And then
Mr. Black.
I'm trying to remember yes, that's what it was. I got this pedal because I'm a huge fan of those Morley phasers.
Yeah.
That are like 8-stage phasers.
Yeah.
And this thing, on paper and theory, is supposed to be 8 stages, and it does it. But usually, like right now, it's set for phaser. Usually, I have it set like this, and this is like my faux Leslie.
Nice.
And it does it really well.
Nice.
But then you can, I think you can turn these knobs almost off, and this thing right here is called the bonus knob.
Okay.
And it literally acts as a manual sweep.
Whoa.
Through the phase, so you can set it at any point of the sweep and just keep it there.
That's pretty cool.
And that dude, that company, they have, I'm signed up to their email list, so they have sales where the pedals aren't ridiculously expensive, and I might have gotten this thing for like $100.
Dude, I love those. Love Pedal was doing that, and I just went crazy forever, like on Love Pedals. I love that guy too.
Yeah.
Nice.
Who are now making the Zen Drive.
Yes. That thing will never leave.
This thing I got in Nebraska probably 9 or 10 years ago. And I got it because of the tone print function, and this thing has the Steve Morse
nice
delay, which that was the whole reason I wanted it in the first place. but every now and then I'll use it for like
A little slip.
that slap and do some crappy Brad Paisley. And then a friend of mine turned me on to these.
Dude,
You familiar with
I
these?
heard that was the same engine that's in Lexicon. Like the same.
It's that, so that's what it had. I mean, you can
Oh,
definitely see it right
yeah,
there.
I didn't know that. I didn't see that.
It's got the same algorithms.
That's insane.
And I got it for the spring reverb because some of my amps don't have it.
Oh yeah.
And it's pretty killer, man. Spring reverb, it's for sure it's not a true spring reverb, but it can come very close. It has this modulated thing that can get real spacey.
Okay, yeah.
And I've done some Jeff Buckley tribute shows where I used that, and that worked out immensely. And it's just like, it's got a plate that I use for like, I think I had this set because I was playing Green Hall with my band a week ago.
Okay, yeah.
And we did, I think we did like some Zeppelin.
Nice.
And I added that plate to it, and it's just, for a little bit of effect, and it's killer. If there's one pedal that I am probably a whore for, it's that.
That's funny. Red says the same thing. I know Red says the same thing. He's like, the sex drive. That's what it is.
Yeah. And for him, like, before Alan Durham approached him at a gig, Red was using the Boss, the blue compression pedal, the CS2 or whatever it was. Yeah. And he would turn the compression down and turn the level up.
That's crazy.
And dude came up to him at a gig and was like, I have a pedal for you to try. And, there it is.
The rest is history.
Yeah. I hate that I rely on it sometimes too much, but it's a cool little pedal, man. If you use it right, and sometimes I don't.
Well, there's no rules, right?
I mean, yeah. so that, that's that as far as like that pedal board, with the exception of a few, like very few pedals, has changed much. The reverb pedal, maybe that thing's been on there for a year or something. I'm not entirely sure. That Animal overdrive, that's certainly only been on there a few months, or at least since the close to the beginning of the year. But everything else is generally the same.
Where's the wah?
I got tired of the one that I was using.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I the funny thing was, I got it because I like wormholed wah pedals one day, or definitely more than one day, and I think once I spent way too much money on like a color sound wah.
Yeah.
That was like refurbished, and when I got it, that thing had the smallest little circuit board on the inside of it, like all this space, and a small, like, little pathetic circuit board on the inside. And the sweep on that pedal was almost non-existent.
Oh wow.
And I hated it and sold it to somebody. Can't remember who. I definitely got the better end of the deal because that pedal was trash. And I don't know that all of them are like that, because I've heard some people say, like, they love the sound. The reason I really liked that particular pedal, or any wah pedal for that matter, is I like those wahs that end up sounding like almost like vomit.
Oh, okay.
Vowels, something like that, where it's just like, it's very wide and throaty, like whenever I think of the quintessential wah sound, I think of the 535Q that Ross used on that solo for Heavy.
Okay.
From Collective Soul, where he's just scratching the strings and doing all this like frantic what have you. Uh-huh. And I always felt like that particular wah sound made it sound like, I don't know, dude, sound like his guitar had a bad night of drinking or something and just started throwing up all these noises. And I always loved that sweep where, like, when you went into the heel position, it was very deep, like, more deep than, say, like a Vox even.
Yeah.
But then when you hit that point of like hearing the deepness go into like the nasal part of the toe, it was very, very noticeable. It sounded like there's a joke that Richard Pryor talks about where he talks about drinking too much.
Huh.
And just his, your body making these involuntary noises when you drink too much and throw up. It's like wah, blah, blah, blah. and like for some reason I've always liked that particular sound of a wah, where it's just a very, very wide sweep.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I'll be on the lookout for you. I'll find a few recommendations for you because that's all I do.
Between the blue chips.
Oh, you got on the blue chip?
You gave me one, dude.
Sorry about that.
It was like a couple of Christmases back or something, and I was at your place, and I had like the blue Tortex or whatever, and you're like, oh, that's cool. Why don't you check out one of these? You said blue chips and handed me a pick that was not blue at all.
Yeah, they're the ugliest things ever. Like, we need to work on the marketing, but yeah.
and like I looked at it for a second, and you were like, no, you don't understand. And you like everything else that I end up buying eventually, you just like talked it up like, no, like look, it's got the bevel this, and like, no, you should really just check it out. And when I asked you about the price, I was like, dude, for a pick, really? Really? And so I kept that first one, and if you can believe this, because I was doing the road gig at the time, plenty of opportunities to lose picks.
Yeah.
I held on to that one. I've probably still got it somewhere, but I wore it out in about I want to say I probably wore it out in like 8 or 9 months.
Well, yeah, that's the cool part, is that they last forever.
Then once I did that, I got a second one. I think I got a thicker one. Like I forget which. Did you get like the?
I think I do a 40.
What was the thickness?
Though it's like 1.15, like TD40.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I got the next higher up
in
thickness, which was like the 60 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I've still got that, and it's kind of cool, but I can definitely feel the difference between that and then the other one.
Yeah.
And so I ended up getting another one of the other ones. Maybe I'm on the third one. It's been so long, but I remember like I wore through one of the other replacements in probably like half the time.
Whoa.
Because like I was playing a lot, but I like just like very like violent with the pick, like scratching and all these things that you probably don't want to do with that pick because it's so expensive.
Do it on the bottom end. That's what Rome does.
I thought about that too. I'm just surprised that like how much I've managed to hold on to those picks, because like and any other pick you just lose it. Yep. It's like well, whatever.
Yep.
And there have been many drunken and or belligerent nights where like even in like an alternate state of mind,
you're like, I gotta get this guy.
If I had it in my pocket and we were on the bus or something, I would go for my keychain that has the little pick leather yes, and deliberately put it in there and tuck it away in something, because I knew the moment I lost it I was gonna be pissed.
That is awesome, man, dude.
So yeah, thanks, Ray.
Well, you're very welcome. I'm glad that I'm having a nice impact. Hey, before we run out of time, man, tell me about that pro, because you told me about that the other night.
Yeah. So some dude between Wimberley and Dripping Springs, which like 20 or 30-minute drive from me.
Yeah.
Had been trying to get rid of it, and I don't necessarily think it was a money factor, because I went and saw the dude's place, and he looks like he lives on probably like 10 acres over there or something, and land over in that area is not cheap.
Yeah.
But he had it priced relatively low, and it came with the case. And to be honest with you, I didn't want the case.
Oh.
Like, I just, like, if I had a road gig, it would be one thing, but like, I was just like, like I even thought about the aspect of like, can I even fit that thing in the car? and thankfully, I managed to fit the amp and everything in the case. In like, it took up the entire trunk.
Yeah.
But I got it in the trunk. And a good friend of mine named Tom Hughes, he has one that he's had for I don't even know how long. I want to say he got it from a Guitar Center or something like 20, 30 years ago or something like that. Like, it's been a while, but he had his modded by Kendrick. You remember that amp company?
Kendrick. Yeah.
He had his modded by that company, and they completely disabled the normal channel.
Interesting. Okay.
And I think that just added, like, it added something more to the vibrato channel.
Okay.
Or whatever. Like, I don't know if it was necessarily more power or what, but there was a reason he had that channel disabled, and I think it was probably just more power. But his looks almost identical to that thing.
Nice drip edge.
And I remember he couldn't get his fixed in Austin. Like, he didn't really trust, because when you go to any place in Austin, as you very well know, unless you know the person that's working on the stuff, even then at some of the bigger name stores in town, you're kind of just a number.
Yeah.
And because I've managed to make friends with, I know a dude that lives up in Austin that I've known now for like 10 years, who's the sickest guitar player, and can look at just a schematic of like any Fender and tell you what is what and where it goes.
Wow.
And how to make this one thing in the signal chain just be completely different, like adjust. He took a Silverface Twin that he got relatively cheap because he could make it work again for, a few dollars for parts. And
those mad scientists.
He blackfaced the inside of the circuitry, doing whatever he needed to do with it. But he added a feature to maybe it was the volume knob or something, and it was like a push-pull feature that changed the tone stack. So one, I think in was twin reverb, and out was like I can't remember if it was like a super or I don't think it was a pro. Maybe it wasn't a Vibrolux even, but like it was a completely different tone stack of just another Fender. And I remember, as brilliant as the dude is and very generous with knowledge, he gave me one of those like Radio Shack little readers to biasing probes and whatnot. And he handed it to me and took a blank sheet of just like printer paper and wrote out this like calculus equation from like the very top left corner of the page all the way down to the bottom, like by memory. Dude didn't look at a book or anything. He just wrote it out. And I watched him write it, and he hands me the sheet of paper, and he was like, with these two things, you can bias any amp you want. You'll be fine. And I didn't have the heart to tell him, like, dude, I am so bad at math. Like, you just wasted paper trying to hand me something that I'll never know.
That tree died in vain.
Dude. And like I said, he meant well, but like I stared at it and just got this anxiety in my chest. Like, I can't read it. And even if I tried, I'll probably break or burn something. And like, and eventually I was like, Omar, like, I know you meant well, dude, but like, I don't understand any of what was on that paper, let alone how you were able to write it out from just memory.
Yeah.
But, going back to what I was saying, I took my friend Tom's Pro to Sound Vibes.
Okay.
And like, Willie was probably still working there at the time. I think Buddy might have been working there too. And one of them fixed his amp. I can't remember if it was like a new tubes issue or what necessarily, but yeah, they ended up working on the amp, and I used it on a gig when I went back to pick it up. And after the fact, I took it back to him, and he was just like floored, like, man, like, hey, you know, dude, like Sound Vibes to me is always going to be home, because it's like, that's, as a kid, that's where you got to look at the craziest expensive gear that you normally, like, for me, I couldn't. I remember DeGraff losing his mind when I asked about playing a Gibson that was hanging behind the counter. And I was like 8 or 9, and he was like, you cannot come in here and handle the guitars if you do not have money to buy the guitars. You should not be asking about the guitars. Don't even stare at the guitar for fear of dropping it. Just do not handle the guitar unless you plan on buying it. Do you plan on buying the guitar? And I was like, no. Well, then you're not playing the guitar. I was like, dude.
Corpus.
But yeah, those dudes really know. Like, I'm glad I knew, and I'm still friends with Willie even now. He came up to the area on my birthday, and I had this little jam at some basement bar in Green.
Yeah.
And it was me, him, and another friend of mine, and we sat there and drank and just played acoustic guitars. And I've actually been recording guitar on a lot of Willie stuff.
That's amazing.
Willie just has a bunch of songs, and there was like some faux Tejano tune, some sort of like Texas Tornado song, sounding song that I recorded guitar stuff on. There's some country stuff where I used every Brad Paisley and Red Lick I could possibly think of on there. And I like I said, I'm still friends with the dude. And aside from meeting people that know what they're doing, and he was the first dude to introduce me, like, much like yourself, that would say, like, well, the twin that I had, he was like, these are Russian tubes. Have you tried American tube? I was like, I didn't know there was a difference. And so at the time, Groove Tubes was kind of, I think Aspen Pittman was like about to sell the company. So like all the American stuff was just like in very high demand, and they were trying to just buy it up.
Yeah.
And Willie ended up putting some American GEs or something in that twin. And that was the first time I ever heard the difference between stock tubes versus something like American. And when I heard the difference, even as a kid, I was like, wow, like I couldn't believe how much of a difference just tubes made.
Yeah. I think every once in a while Willie would take a few liberties with amps. I remember taking in my basement, and it was not the same amp when he gave it back, but it was
like in a good way or
in
bad
a
way?
Perfect way. In one of those, like, I am on the floor just floored that this thing could sound that good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I love him for that.
You talking about that basement behind you?
No, it was a Tweed 410.
Oh, yes. Dude, I remember that amp.
Yes.
I remember. So I remember this was probably the first time I had heard a volume boost pedal.
Yeah.
And you were over at my parents' house with that big ass amp. And you had a Katana.
Yes.
That was in front of it. And that was also another pedal that has come and gone from my collection. Thank you, Ray. But I remember like playing with my gear, and we were jamming, and then you're like, oh, check this out. And you slammed that pedal on, and it just did this with like everything. And I remember like trying to keep up with it, and I was like, my amp just doesn't sound loud anymore. Like nothing. It sounded like it was buried after you added that pedal. And so for some reason that makes me think of the same concept as the Sex Drive.
Yeah.
Like, you know, just that clean, big clean headroom, which the knob on that thing, if I remember, could also get very dirty.
Yeah. If it was like a push pull thing.
That's what it was. Yeah. Do you still have any of those pedals?
Yeah, it's in the closet.
I the same one you've always had?
The same one, number 30,
oh, wow.
32. No, maybe number 18. I can't remember. It's one that I didn't even know it was a low number until I sent it back for a little like upkeep. You know what I mean? Because I think the switch went bad, and they're like, "Wow, this is one of the first katanas we ever made." And I was like, "Oh, cool, cool, man. Send it back. I need that thing."
Right. Don't get it lost.
Yeah, please don't lose my katana. Well, man, like,
That's funny.
what's going on? What do you got planned music wise? Are you writing, or are you just or is everything past the pandemic for you? Or are you still kind of like, what's your percentage at right now for the State of the Union?
So for me, when this stuff started, the only thing I could really do to just, because I mean, even right now, people are getting laxed
Hmm.
about the idea of going out, and especially around here, like there are a lot of people that just don't consider the idea of wearing a mask. Like it's just doesn't occur to them. It's not on their radar.
Wow.
And that scared me when I went back to playing gigs. I the last gig I had played when the stuff went down was in March,
Okay.
and I waited till early April, and I played a church gig with my friend Andre at a gospel church on the opposite side of town, and it was an outdoor gig.
Okay.
So the band set up under some tent, which didn't provide much coverage when the sun shifted.
Mm.
But I was okay with that because we were outside.
Yeah.
And then like the following week, I played a gig with that same dude, Andre. I played with his band. It's a band called the Clever Name Band out of New Braunfels. And they were playing a joint over there. It's a really great burger joint that has a live music venue outside where it's like it's partially covered. Like there's a wall or something that's missing that goes out into like a beer garden.
Okay.
I guess. And it can house a lot of people, but this was whatever beginning stage it was where Texas was trying to just allow a certain amount of people in bars.
Yeah.
And they kept saying that they were like at capacity at times where they were just not letting people in because of said percentage. But when I got there to that initial gig, it felt like the place was just packed with people, like beyond the point of like we're telling people that we're at capacity for, like, it didn't seem like they were following the rules. There were so many people.
Yeah.
And then everybody, the staff was wearing gloves,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't see anybody wearing a mask. And that freaked me out. Like that just got me freaked out. And then somebody wanted to use my mic, and I was like, really, dude? Really?
Yeah.
And that kept me away from gigs till I guess recently, over the past few weeks, month even.
Okay.
I've definitely played. I played my first gig outside of the house. Man, it must have been Monday
Wow.
of last week when my band played Green Hall, and we did the main stage, which was bittersweet because that's only for headliners, and the bands that play during the week play on the opposite side behind the bar.
Yeah.
But they were doing it for pandemic purposes, keeping the band on stage. And dude, we really didn't play to a whole lot of people, unfortunately, because it was definitely Labor Day.
Yeah.
But everybody was there during the afternoon, and we played from like 6 to 9. And there were a few people that hung around and stuck around in there and stuff, but that was probably my first gig. And then the same friend of mine, Andre, is part of a new church that opened up across town from here, and I did a rehearsal with them last week, and maybe the week before that, I can't quite remember, but they did their first like actual service or something where a bunch of ministers or preachers or something from different churches came, and they essentially like brought in the dude's young cat named Colby, who's the minister at this new place. And Saturday was like his service of like officially, I guess, officiating him as a minister of that place.
Nice.
And then we did a Sunday service, and that's been a cool gig in the sense that like, did you grow up Catholic?
No, I grew up the opposite end. I'm Baptist.
Okay.
I'm careful when I say
So,
it because I'm like, man, we've done a lot of bad things as Baptist. Like,
hey, Catholics aren't free from sin
oh
either,
yeah.
apparently. But no, I couldn't tell you what the denomination of this church is. What I can say for sure is like I am a minority in the church. That between me and the other guitar player is a cat named Pancho,
Oh, nice.
and me, him, and one other guy that's in the choir are the only Hispanics in a church full of black folk.
Nice.
And being raised Catholic, especially like I played in the Catholic church choir, like it was, some guitars, and I think that's why I kind of learned how to read chord symbols and stuff like that. But like the music was just always sad.
Yeah. Different
And
vibe, huh?
dude, minor keys and repentance. I mean, that's all it was. And then the first time I ever heard a Picardy third was some song that we played that was minor, and then just went to, like, if it was F sharp minor, went to F sharp major at the very end.
little
As
pepper.
this, and I from that point on, like I always felt like that describe like the Picardy third more than anything describes the Catholic faith to a T, in that like there's just that little half step of hope. but playing in predominantly black churches, gospel churches, however you want to look at it, like I never felt this way in the Catholic church, but I was in a gospel group where I got to play a gig with a friend of mine named LD, and he was doing a CD release, and his grandma, this little old unassuming woman, came and she sang on a track called what was the name of that song? I can't remember the name right now, but his grandma's LD was a great singer. His grandma was absolutely something else. And the moment I heard her voice, I loved her.
Nice.
Like just on the recording. And then when I got to do the gig with her and watch this unassuming little old lady get up, dude, and just tear, like her voice was 50 times the size of her frame. She was such a small person.
That's awesome.
But she did some sort of like spiritual song with the this cat, I can't remember his name right now, but he's a killer organist that was part of the band, and it was just the two of them, him playing organ and her singing.
Wow.
And there was an instance where she sang and hit some note, and dude, I was bawling like a child. I was crying so hard hearing this woman sing. And I've never been moved like that at a Catholic service. I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to discredit it as a faith, but like in playing with this new church and being around a group of individuals that just make really exciting music.
Yeah.
Whether or not like my faith is any more or less than theirs, it's just I've never had anything but good feelings and good I've always had good experiences with black churches, despite the fact that I'm clearly a minority.
Yeah.
And just showing up and being me and playing guitar, and like, it's always been very encouraging. And like this past weekend, that they at this particular church will feed you as much food as you think you can handle.
Yeah, that's amazing.
and this past Sunday was Soul Food Sunday.
Yeah.
So there was barbecue chicken, there was meatloaf, there was some stewed greens, some bread and some other stuff, dude. And like when I was eating into the barbecue chicken, I was like, oh no, like somebody actually barbecued this. Like they didn't just put it in an oven. Like you could taste the smoke in the chicken, dude. And like everybody's just so cool, and so like it feels very welcoming.
Yeah, very genuine.
And yeah, and the musicianship on top of that, dude. Like people that are playing keys will go get on the drums and then get behind the bass and just keep switching off instruments, and then everybody sings on top of that, and it's like, what the hell did I do with my life? Like it's definitely very uplifting, but it's also very just like it makes me want to be a better player, because a lot of that stuff has so many just random runs and hits and fills,
Yeah.
and it's not easy.
Well, dude, I'm getting the signal that the batteries are running out, but we gotta do this again. Maybe season two.
Whenever, dude, just say the word.
Where can people go to find you online, like your stuff?
Nick, all one word, Nick Garcia Music, NickGarciaMusic, right? .com.
Okay, nice.
There's Facebook too, but lately Facebook has been very uh, negative to a point where it's less music and more
Yeah,
politics.
yeah, yeah.
And I've done some live stream stuff over the course of the past few
Yeah,
months,
yeah, yeah. I've seen that.
um, and those have been cool to a point. Um, but definitely, I've got an album of 10 songs that I've been holding on to for dear life now for a long time, that I am working on. And really, at this point, it's just adding a guitar here and there, and vocals.
Nice.
And the album is aptly named for as long as I've been holding on to it, which is called "Don't Start What You Can't Finish."
Nice.
And that'll be done before the end of this year.
Nice.
So I mean that'll be another place, or certainly the website will be a place to find that for sure.
So nickgarcia.com. Check him out if you guys get
Nick Garcia Music.
nickgarciamusic.com. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes, sir.
And everything else, Instagram, Facebook, everything else. So hit Nick up. Nick, thanks so much for being here, man. Like, it means the world. It really does. We've been friends for 20 years, brother. And it's just amazing to do this.
It's been a while, yeah.
Well, man, we'll catch you soon. I really do appreciate you being here, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week on the Bandemic Podcast.
See y'all. Bye, Rome.